course on the power of orchestrated color. We're lucky today to have him give us his thoughts on color theory. And I dare say that I think a lot of you know him from the Coors show. So take it away, Skip. We're so happy to have you.
Well, thank you for that glowing introduction. My first question is, okay, do I just click on the share screen? And then we'll go, I'm guessing. Okay.
Yes, I made you a co-host.
Okay, so I just hit share.
Yep. And you can screen share. Yep.
Okay, so now all I have to do is go to, I have a couple different presentations here. One of them we'll go through fairly quickly. The other is a little more in depth, and there'll be a slight bit of duplication in these. So we'll go to this one first, and this is one that I've been giving the last few years to audiences and to workshops. And so I'd kind of start off here explaining basic color theory that all the old painters understood this. They were educated in this at the great ateliers and the academies. That's why early on, most all American painters either went to Munich or to Paris to study in the 1800s. And this was all standard fare, this color, understanding of color theory and the basic theory of harmony. But along about well, then they brought this back to the US and started teaching fellow painters what they had learned, sharing that. And about 1915, between 1915 and 1920, most all this was thrown out the window with the whole avant-garde movement of painters, with the abstract expressionists. However, most of the accomplished abstract expressionists were classically trained, and that's why their work today still stands the test. It still holds very strongly in the museums and is very moving to study because they have classical foundation behind their work. And what happened was, as the generations, if you will, moved out from that, spread out from that, they determined that this basic theory of color harmony was irrelevant, was anachronistic. So it wasn't taught anymore. And it's been basically lost. I've spent at least the last 15 to 20 years researching, studying, because we were taught a form of it in school, but we weren't taught why it worked. And so I wanted to know, I wanted to look behind the curtain. I wanted to see why it worked. And so with considerable research and resurrecting old papers, letters, and studio journals, I began to discover what those guys had been taught. So I'd just like to share kind of the Cliff's Notes version of it with you guys, because this course that I'm teaching is a year long. So I have 117 students for a year studying this, and it really takes that long to thoroughly integrate it into your process. But this will hopefully give you some things to consider when you go to the museum and look at the great paintings. I have several examples here from the Denver Art Museum. So yeah, this is to start off with. Basically, we deal with complementary arrangements, which means say orange and blue, as you can see on the screen here, or a yellow, green, red, violet setup plan. And what it does is, it doesn't mean you're only using two colors. It means that you're using variations of, say, yellow green. You could have three variations of yellow green and two variations of red violet, its complement, to construct a painting. Basically, the process is the recommendation is for any given painting for the artist to try not to go over 5 colors, meaning you have, in the case of, we'll take the orange blue, I might have 3 oranges and 2 blues. There's 5 colors. So how those colors interact and cross mix with each other gives me a quite a wide range of color that will appear in that painting, that painting is composed of. So we'll go up here to this this Lundgren piece that is a little watercolor. It's in the Denver Art Museum, and this is a basic complementary plan: a red, orange, and a blue, green. Now, when you look at it, you'd say, well, holy cow, there's a lot more color in there than that. But no, if you get your nose right up to as close as the guards will allow, you will see that there is really only this area down in here, and whoops, I didn't mean to do that. This area down here in the ground plane is actually a very thinned out version of this orange that he's using here. And the sagebrush color is basically a viridian, a blue-green, that when it's thinned out can appear to be blue in the sky in real light washes like up here, or in heavier concentrations, you really see the color right there. And to get the darks, it's simply a mix of that blue-green and that red-orange, and then you get your darks down in here. So it's the way to tell is to really study a piece and look for the brightest colors, because those are the tell. That's what tells you what that artist was actually using to create the illusion of a much broader range of color. Now, here's another. This is a double complement. Let's see here. I got to get the picture. This is Maynard Dixon, and I can't remember if I shot this at the Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City, if that's in their collection, or if it's in the Denver collection. It's one of the two places. At any rate, you can see here his basic plan was yellow-orange against a blue-violet, and a yellow-green against a red-violet. And here's how we tell. Here is the blue-green. You can see it appear in the shutters on the building. And here's a little bit bluer green version of that blue-green in the shirt of this guy over here. Over here, we've got the red-orange. You can see that. And you can see an overall yellow feel to this painting. In this particular case, he did most all the painting is actually done first, the application of the paint. Then when it dries, he ran a very delicate yellow glaze, a transparent glaze. It's like a wash over all the sunstruck areas to reinforce the yellow-orange feel. And down here in the shadows, he ran a thin, again, a glaze of the blue-violet, which creates this yellow-violet complement. So once again, when you get into the museum and you look at these and with the idea in mind that there's nothing in this painting, in any of these paintings, that's there by accident. These all have a very definite plan to them. They're very thoroughly thought out, compositionally, value-wise, the light-dark pattern, as well as the color is equally as thoroughly thought out and tested. How do I want this thing to feel? Now here's one of Henning's that's in the Denver Museum, and this is a straight orange blue. So a complementary plan of orange and blue, and he knew that going into this painting. He obviously did, or most likely did, a little field study or an on-the-spot painting. This very possibly could have been out of his studio window down there in Taos. And and then constructed a larger painting, more orchestrated painting around a very definite color plan. And you can see, I mean, this one is quite obvious because you see the beautiful delicate blue up in here and then the orange in the barn area. These are all, everything going on back in this background area, as well as the foreground, are all variations of an orange and blue combination, intermixed, one that's a little bit more orange, one that's a little bit more blue. And purely mixed orange and blue will give you these nice extreme darks down in here that appear to be black. They're actually not. They actually have a color to them. And you can take that orange blue, say what he used for his dark down in here, and you look at the real delicate violet feel on the gate over here. That's just that same this color right in here with some white added to it and maybe a little bit more blue, so it looks cool. It's cooler than the warms that are around here. So we'll go down here to a good friend of mine, James Morgan. You all have most likely seen his work at the Coors show. And this is a red, orange, yellow, orange, and blue. This is what we refer to as a split complement, which is right back up here. We look down in this, this plan right down here. This would be basically Jim's plan would be very similar. So red, orange, opposed by a green, blue, blue, green. And so that would mean simply that the complement, the key color would be the red, orange, opposed by its blue-green complement, and then the color on either side of that blue-green. That's what we refer to as a split complement. So that's what Jim has used over here. And when I asked him, I said, hey, Jim, would you mind if I use one of your paintings for a presentation? And he, oh gosh, no. I said, it's a color presentation. Here's what I'm thinking this painting is all about. And I told him, I just said, it's a blue with your red, orange, and yellow, orange. He said, well, yeah, that's what it is. So you'd have to know Jim to understand the way he talks. He's a slow talking fellow, and he's a fabulous painter, very thoughtful, beautifully designed pieces. But the implication here is that it is full color. And that's what, as a painter, we want to do. We want to say more with less. So it's the same as a musician. When they compose a piece, the composer doesn't necessarily compose a piece of music that is going to include the entire orchestra. It may be only select sections of the orchestra and then only in certain keys. And this is exactly the same thing we do as painters. Go down here to a little bit different arrangement. These are referred to as triads, which simply means often you all have most likely heard the term bounced around, whether you're talking to a decorator, an interior decorator, or going into the paint store. And the triads that we're most familiar with would be the primary colors, yellow, blue, and red. And so there's three colors right there. And that's a very functional palette for a painter to use, because you can pretty much mix whatever you want with those three colors, any range of color. You mix yellow and blue, and you got green. You mix yellow and red, you got orange. Red and blue, you got violet. So, I mean, and all different permutations of those combinations. This is another very valuable tool that we're using. My mentoring, my group, my mentoring session is these guys are all over this triad and the various variations on the triad and split complements. They're just going wild with this stuff, and some wonderful results. Now, there's another that's used, it's a little more sophisticated triad, and this is a 3-4-5. And by that, it simply means that if you consider the color wheel like the face of a clock, there are 12 colors that we work with. The primaries, the secondaries, and the tertiaries, which are just combinations of the primaries. And over here in the with a simple triad, a straight triad, the distance between each point, say here orange, is 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces all the way around. It's an equilateral triangle. Well, over here on a with a color chord, that's how this is referred to, is up here we have 1, 2, 3, that's the 3. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a 4, and then we've got 5 spaces back to orange. The reason this is called a chord is it's based on a musical chord, which is also based, the 3, 4, 5 is a natural progression. It occurs in nature. That's why when we hear that 3, 4, 5 musical chord, it, no pun intended, it strikes a chord into us, into our basically our DNA, who we are as human beings. And that's across all languages. The same thing applies in color. This is something that's really a powerful tool. And we'll go to, this is a 3, 4, 5 palette. That's what it looks like. This is one of mine. And here's a simple one, just yellow, red, orange, and blue, violet. Now here's one that I used in a painting, which we'll look at next. And this was a yellow, green, a blue, and a red, orange. And you can see down here, I actually used 2 red oranges, and they're both, one is, no, they're both mixed. They're both mixed. One of them is with a really dark, what we call Mars red, and mixed with a little bit of cadmium orange to give me a real earthy red orange like you see down in this area. The other is a tube paint, which is permanent bright red. It's a really brilliant, warm red. It's hot. And so I mixed a little bit of cad orange with that one also to give me this hotter color, this higher chroma, hotter color. And up here, I used a tube, a yellow green that came in a tube, a particular one, along with a mixed yellow green that was more earthy and was more of a natural feel to it. So when I combine these, this is a test board that I do for a painting. And so I want to see what kind of combinations I get by mixing these various colors together and in varying quantities to get a range, a sense of the range. And this is what happens when basically they're all mixed together. I get my neutral grays, which are very, very important to me. Now, this is a progression of, these aren't to scale because this piece down here was the finished, the studio piece, and it is 42 inches wide. And I think it's like 24, it's kind of an oddball size. It's like a 25 by 42, I think. This was the piece that I did on location, on the spot, up in Wyoming in the Bighorn Mountains. And it was just one afternoon. It's a little 8 by 10. And then when I got back in the studio, I started planning this thing out. I worked my color board, and then to make sure my color board is going to work, I do a color study. And this is oil on paper, and I work my composition out on at this stage. And once I realized that, yes, this is going to work, and I start in on the big one. And this was the result of, I can't try to let you have a better look at this. So you can see the things that I was looking for was really this wonderful orchestration of these hot yellow greens in here, and the same in the lily pads, and what happened when these lily pads went into shadow. here, I needed that cool blue green, yellow green feel that would tell the viewer that, okay, there's a shadow being cast across this pond. So basically, that's studio procedure. So at this point, I will go to the next one, which is right here. Okay. This one will be a little bit more explanatory. And this is a quote that I put out there for all of my classes. And this was from a book on landscape painting by a American painter named Burge Harrison. And he's an incredible colorist, just a wonderful, wonderful painter. And this was what he learned when he studied in Paris, was that the more experienced the artist, the more limited his or her palette will be. Most painters limit themselves to 5 or less colors. And when it extends beyond 7, it's pretty safe to presume that we're dealing with an amateur or a student painter. And the great Scandinavian, not Norwegian, the other one, I'm blanking right now, but Anders Zorn, Swedish. Zorn was an incredible painter, and many of you may be familiar with his work. He's a wonderful figure painter. And he painted all those incredible interiors with nudes, bathing, and going about the daily routines of life inside with a 3-color palette. And you can see his vermilion, which is a real bright hot red, yellow ochre, which is an earthy yellow, and he used black as his blue. That's a basic triad. What we were looking at earlier with the primary colors, a red, yellow, and blue. In this case, he used black as his blue. And and another great adage that I tell students constantly is values, which are the light dark quality in any painting, from black to the real high key, the whites. They really do the work. And in most cases, the color will get the credit when it's really, the credit is not due. The success or failure of the painting is on the drawing and the values. So we'll go to here. This is my working palette in the studio, and I just threw this in so you get an idea of the way I arrange mine, from my yellows to earthy yellow up here in the corner. Oh, I can draw on this. I forgot. There. This would be yellow ochre, what Zorn used for his yellow. And here we go into the cad oranges, and into a cold red. This would be a rose and a alizarin crimson, which are cold. I rarely use a hot red because I can mix it. I can mix it with this alizarin and one of my yellows, and I can get a real hot red. And here are the blue range of cobalt and ultramarine, and then into the greens of Viridian, which is a cool green. And over here, I'll occasionally use an olive green. And over here, this is kind of the convenient side of colors that I might put out for a specific painting. And you can see a yellow green over here. So it's really a very functional, broad ranging palette. Now we'll go to, what do I have here? Okay, now we've seen this. We looked at this in the previous presentation. And again, simple complements with split complements explained down here. And so we won't dwell on this. And we go into, here's Jim's painting again. And I laid it out so that, whoops, let's see. I've got you guys over here in my in my toolbar. Got everybody's faces in there. This we talked about, we discussed this, and in this case, it was, you can see on the color wheel that I've superimposed is yellow orange, which you would see up in this area, right in here. And you also see it over here in these real high key areas, down here in the water. See it down there. The red oranges, we can get rid of this. The red oranges would be in this area in here. And we can go. The blue then becomes obvious in find my, this, all this area in here, and these wonderful notes in here. And we'll notice that in these areas, like right in here, that blue is more of a pinkish violet. Well, that's because he's mixing some of his red orange with this blue, which will give you the warmer, that reflected light back into the shadows of that snowbank. So, and again, the darks in here are simply versions of the blue and orange combination that you can get basically a value in there that looks black, which we were looking at right in here. So now we can go to, this was basically a palette similar to what Jim would have used in his piece. And I've just overlaid an orange blue to show you what is possible here. You could use mixed oranges on either side of this. These mixed oranges in here. And these are examples of what you get when you start combining some of these with the blues down in here. And I've showed a little sample of ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, and to the layman's eye, there's probably not a whole lot of difference, but in mixtures for a painter, there's a huge difference between these two blues. And this is a blue black that is actually a tube color, and it's really ivory black and ultramarine mixed together and put in a tube. But that's oftentimes one that I like to use. These are all just great tools that we have at our command to create a painting. Now here's one. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with George Carlson's work. He's a good friend, tremendous painter, sculptor, just a really well-rounded, highly respected painter. And in this case, George has chosen to work with a very limited palette, extremely limited. It's almost a monochromatic, meaning two colors only. And it's really is something right between this yellow, orange and orange. And sorry, I can't draw too well with my fingers here on this pad. But everything in this painting is a combination of those two colors, everything in here. This thing wants to creep on me like that when I try to enlarge, but it gives you an idea of, I mean, he's gone from his pure black, like a blue black in here in the trunk of this, all the way to the oranges, which are, as I mentioned earlier, you look for what's the brightest color in there. Well, that orange, you can see these notes of, those are as close to pure color as I can find in that painting. What's the other thing that's closest to a pure color? Well, let me find my pointer here. I lost it. Yeah, there it is. This area in here, that tells you, okay, Those are the two cleanest colors I can find. Therefore, everything in this painting is comprised of those two colors. You see the power that a limited palette can give you. These are the things that are really fun to look for when you go into a museum. What can I find? I want to see how sneaky this painter really was. And in a case like this, you think to yourself, holy cow. Yeah, okay, I got it. And when we talked about values do all the work and color gets the credit, this is a perfect example of values, the lights and darks carrying the message. And just look at the intervals in here around this little dark twig tree. The distance between the negative, what we call negative shape, the air between here and here, those are different sizes. Those are all very thoroughly thought out. Even the distance between the edge of the canvas, this negative shape, and this one, they're different. They have variety to them. You'll find this wonderful variety throughout the painting. The same with the variety from the darkest darks to the middle darks to the lightest lights to the lights in the snow. These are all so thoroughly thought through, and it allows the viewer, knowing this, it empowers you to go in and really look at a painting at a much deeper level. It's like reading a great piece of literature that I know we all have our favorite books and our favorite poems and our favorite short stories that we go back and read time and time again. And each time we get something new out of them, we see something new in them. The same thing happens with a painting that's so beautifully orchestrated. This is the thing we do. This is the thing we live for, is to see how we can make this happen.
Skip,
Now,
can I
sure.
interject a question?
You bet.
How did Carlson get the snow with the yellow, orange, and the blue?
Oh, that is so sneaky. That is such a, yes. This was hanging at the Prix de West a few years ago. And when I saw it, I saw it from completely across the gallery and went, holy cow, he put basically a black and white painting in here. And I went up and studied this thing. And then I talked to him later and I said, geez, George, that was so sneaky what you did with that. These are all variations. Let me put my overlay back on here. These are all variations in here of the orange blue, or the orange black is really what he used in here. But you can tell by the grays that he achieved over in this area. You can tell by looking at those that he uses black, a blue black for his blue. This is a combination, these two colors mixed together with a lot of white added to them, and it feels like snow. It's warm snow. It doesn't have any real coolness to it, except back here in some of these little passages where he lets that blue dominate, just that black dominate a little bit more. The thing is just sheer genius. It just knocks me over when I see it. I love looking at it. So I hope that answered your questions. He did not deviate from his primary color plan.
Thank you. I think that
But
does.
you said he used white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought you said he mixed that in with white for his snow.
Right.
Well, you didn't, that's not on the color wheel.
No, white is not considered a color. For when you're working a palette, a two-color palette, say in this case, white is always there. You never rule that one out. It's a non-figure in your palette because it's a lightener. We use it to lighten, to modify color.
Well, are you using titanium white then?
Sure. Yeah, that's the general purpose white. That or flake white. I know for a time we all use it as lead white. You have to be careful with it, but yes, that's absolutely. So if you're talking about a primary triad of red, yellow, blue, and say, okay, that's what I'm going to work with. Well, it's a given that white will be part of that. So
Well,
that's,
let me ask a question. I paint,
Mhm.
and what would your prime color be on your canvas before you add these colors in? Would it be a white? Would it be an ochre? And then you would put these colors on? Or is it just one of the ways to get the snow is to scrape the paint off, and use the canvas? But I'm not hearing you say that.
No, most all canvas today is white. So
Right.
when you start working with it, and let me see if I can get this thing to come down. Oh, I have to acknowledge. Okay. Yeah, we look down in here, and you can see George has laid his white paint down on top of this. The lightest areas in here are almost pure white, but they still have some of that orange mixed into them. But the very topmost layers, you can identify them right here because they're going over the top of these grayer. Can you see those okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, yeah. I mean, we all start with white canvas. And
Well,
some guys will run a wash and tone it a little just to knock the white off, so you're not working against that bright white. But yeah, I'm hoping that answered your question.
well, would he lay down the dark shadow first, the orangey white, and then bring the white on top of it?
Right, right. That's a classic way of working, is from dark to light
Yeah.
on an oil painting. And yeah, or you can work from a mid-tone and work dark and work light, work up, work down from it. We all have our own ways of doing it, and each individual painting will dictate how you're going to start it and what the process will be. So
And is he paletting in the white, or is he brushing it in?
no, that looks like he's put it on with a knife.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Right. Or some tool. George uses lots of different tools, many of them are unconventional. So it's no telling what he used. I mean, we get a big laugh over that when we talk about it because,
Paper towel does wonders.
oh, absolutely. I do a lot of block in with paper towels, and I'll even run a glaze with a paper towel over dry paint. So, yeah, it's all great stuff. Great question too.
Skip, can I interject one more question from the gallery?
You bet.
Can you talk a little bit about using white both in oil and watercolor? When to use it, for example, in watercolor, is it better to let the paper be white?
Well, there are two schools on that, and there's a real uh, defined divide between those two schools. There's one that is very what they call traditionalist, and that is you'd never add white to watercolor. You only use the white of the paper. And then there's the other freer school, which says, sure, you can add white. It's referred to in watercolor painting as body color. You can certainly add white to it. I mean, the ones that strictly adhere to transparent only, no white, are kind of the fundamentalists of the watercolor world. And so by those rules, then Winslow Homer, John Singer Sargent, or Anders Zorn couldn't have exhibited in any of their shows because they all used white in their watercolors. So
Interesting.
hope that answers your question. I will use it. I will try and I'll push a watercolor as far as I can go. And if I feel like I need some body color, I'll use it. So, and I use a lot, I work a lot in gouache too, which is opaque watercolor, which is a wonderful medium and very versatile. It's light, it's just lightweight, just like regular watercolor is to carry around. You don't have to have a lot of gear. And you can work fast. So, and the beauty of gouache is, for me, is I work it exactly the same way I'd work an oil painting. So you can go from dark to light You can, it is opaque. You can use it pardon me, transparently, just like you can oil, and then use it thicker and let it take on its character, which is opaque. So yeah, wonderful mediums out there.
So just a follow up to that, how do you keep the color from dulling when you use white in watercolor?
Well, you use it discreetly. You use it where, say, for instance, I had a shadow on a mountain, and I'd laid it in watercolor in say cobalt blue, and I wanted some to indicate some reflected light back into that. I might take that cobalt blue, add a touch of white to it, and just indicate a passage within that shadow, and it all of a sudden just opens that shadow up. You don't, if you're going to use a lot of it, then you just simply go to gouache and use that. So you want the watercolor itself to maintain its character because it has its own personality, as you know, the watercolor itself, as well as the paper that you use, the brushes that you use, how you apply it, so on and so forth. But transparent watercolor definitely has its own distinct characteristic, and you don't want to override that with too much opaque color. So I hope does that help clarify that?
I think it does. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Somebody's on a pillow. Gosh, I'm jealous. Okay. Now we'll go into some double complements, which is also a very versatile, useful arrangement, which is, as we discussed earlier, is nothing more than a pair of complementary colors. And when we do that, we have the option, as we do with all these, of not only the, let's see, yellow, orange, blue, violet here, but I also mix my yellow, orange and my yellow, green. And the same here, I can use yellow, orange, my blue, violet. So you can see you immediately get a lot of range with this, with a lot of possibilities, that really an infinite number of possibilities. And we'll go to imagine most of you are familiar with Len Shamil. He's shown in the Coors show for many, many years. Also a very good friend of mine. Len and I went to school together at Art Center. And so I've known him. Len and I have been friends for over 50 years now. Ooh, can't believe that. But Len is he's an amazing colorist and a very thoughtful in the way he selects his colors for a given painting. And the immediate implication when you look at one of his pieces is that, holy moly, he's used the whole range of his palette with all these really bright colors, and the implication is that it's a full range of a full palette range. And in reality, it's an illusion. It's smoke and mirrors. Because in this particular case, and when I asked him if I could use this, I said, okay, again, I'm guessing, I've been looking at that painting, and I'm guessing that you used your yellow orange, your yellow green, your dioxazine violet, and phthalo green. And he said, yep, that's all I used. Plus white. So for those of you. So yeah, I mean, and the implication is that let me find here we go, that there's a full range of color in this, and they're really, now I'll get this thing to stop expanding. Okay. So now we'll go down in here. I'll show you. This area in through here is his yellow greens mixed with his blue green. What did I tell you that was on the? I had that he had here. I gotta move this over so I can refresh my memory. Oh yeah, blue violet and red violet. So when you mix this yellow green with this blue violet, you get a real earthy, I mean, you get a real natural green, naturalistic green to this. But when we go down here towards the bottom, this is where you get down into these luscious, and unfortunately, in a digital image, the richness of this doesn't show. But these are these blue violets down in this area, down in here, and this phthalo green that's modified, so it's not so electric down in here. And we go up here towards the top, and this is nothing more up here in this passage that looks like white snow. It is almost pure white, but would be his yellow orange with just a tiny dot of that yellow orange in his white paint. And that gives you that nice warm passage right in here. And then where it kind of rolls over, this area right in here, that's got a little bit more of his orange in it. Oops, wrong one. So what we have is the implication of a full range of color when it's really only composed of 4 colors. I keep losing my little tool here. So I have to, there it is, clear down there. All right.
Here's another novice question.
Certainly.
Is
Those are the best.
purple the same as violet, or can you get violet as a base color?
Those are interchangeable.
Okay.
Yes, there are a whole range of violets and purples, and they're all basically the same. Some of the old colorists claim that the perfect purple is truly an ultramarine with a little Indian red and a little bit of rose added to it in various quantities to get an absolute dead-on violet or purple. So yeah, it can be easily mixed. You can buy tubes in red violets, blue violets. Some are labeled violet, and they're actually, you have to test the color because it may be a red violet and not a true. And so you might have to add some blue to it. So if that's helpful.
Yep.
Well, go back to one of George's paintings again. And again, this is a really subtle piece. And the reason that I drew these lines in between the yellow and yellow orange is because it's the brightest yellow in here is, this is the tell. There's his brightest yellow, and it's a yellow orange. So it's not a true yellow orange. That's why I put this right in here in between, because now we go down here and, all right, what's the next, what kind of a red is in here? Well, I see notes of it right here of a pretty full-bodied red, likely something along the lines of an Indian red or a Venetian. Nah, it's too light to be a Venetian red, more of an Indian red. So we've got our yellow orange up here in this area. We've got our red. So now we know we can mix these reds down in here and this wonderful earthy red over here on the bank. All right. Well, now, and then you say to yourself, okay, I've identified those two. Now, wait a second. How did he get this violet? Where's that coming from? Well, and the green, can't get green or violet from these reds and this red orange that we have here. We can't get that. So obviously there's a blue of some sort in here So I'm saying it's a blue violet. And in addition to that, because he has this red and it doesn't fit with any plan. And I know the plans that George uses because he and I have discussed it in great lengths. He's as fascinated with color as I am. And we've talked about how his color plans work. And he said they're really a pretty basic plan. It's either a double complement or a split complement. And he said that's what we were taught in the academy, and I've never really explored beyond that. He said because it works every time. And he's absolutely right, because with those two, they have an infinite number of permutations depending on which way you slant the color, what colors you use, whether the reds you're using are very earthy reds. In the case of this Indian red that I really think is what he used. I didn't ask him exactly. Here it becomes more obvious over in this area right in here, but knowing from talking to him how he constructs his color plan, then it's easier to kind of dissect what he's doing. And then he ends up with these really gorgeous, delicate violets that are almost like smoke. And the same thing with these really delicate, subtle greens down in here. You don't get those greens by mixing. Stop. Okay. This is the thing I don't know. I haven't quite controlled the enlarge and reducing on this. It has a mind of its own. But you see these wonderful, elegant greens in here. Those can't be achieved with a yellow and violet combination. So, or a red. He needs a blue, a red and a red and a blue violet will not. You can't get to green from there. So we know he's had to add a green, and odds are, because the brightest green is right down in here, that's a very earthy. It could have been terre verte. It could have been an olive green. It could have, unlikely that it's a sap green. A sap green tends to be more of a yellow green. So it was going to be down in that range. And I hope I don't want to get into the weeds too much with you guys, because start doing painter talk with you, because we forget about our audience sometimes and drop into the lingo. And
I think we're loving all of it, but there is another question. Is the Indian red similar to red ochre?
It is. They're slightly, they all are a base color or a base pigment, but the way they're prepared gives them the unique color characteristics. And they may, again, the same base color. In fact, hold on a second. I've got a. Okay, here's an Indian red. Let's see what the base color on it is. It'll have a number. Oh, shoot. It just says synthetic iron oxide. Okay, and this is a highly respected color maker, Old Holland. And this is a synthetic. Well, I use the synthetics. I also use the naturals. And the naturals are actually the pigment that is mined out of the earth and then prepared for putting in a tube and for painters. And the way that, again, I don't want to get into the chemist talk on this, but every color maker, pigment maker, has their own secret recipe for the way they prepare that powdered pigment, how they end up with the color that they do, how they cook it, how it's heated, and how much oxygen is that? I mean, it gets into really heavy duty chemistry, how they do it. But the bottom line is I could have 3 different Indian reds tubes by different paint makers. They'd all be slightly different in color. And this is the same as the red ochre that you asked about. The red ochre has the same base pigment, but the way it's prepared will give red ochre from one brand one color, and from another brand a slightly different color. So as painters, we figured this out over a long period of time, and we figure out which ones are our favorites, and those are the ones that we keep stocked in the studio. So
This has been so exciting, and we're getting many thank yous in the chat. And we do start to lose people after an hour, but I wanted to open it up to questions. If anyone had any others, you can either unmute yourself or write it in the chat if you'd like.
absolutely.
I've got a comment from a friend. Hi there, did not know you were into painting. Let's get together and discuss painting. Anyway, this is so interesting, and people are so thankful that you've been here. One thing I want to say, Skip, is I feel like we did just scratch the surface, and I'm sort of thinking in our programming next year, maybe we could do a color theory 201 instead of 101. What do you think?
We can certainly do that.
Can we get you back again?
Excuse me. Absolutely.
Good.
Wonderful group. Oh, pardon me. I got.
Any more questions?
There is.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for watching, Terry. Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on ad infinitum on this stuff, but it's exciting. You know, it's exciting. As painters, we get really excited about it. We get excited about color plans and you know, looking at one of your buddy's paintings hanging in a show, you look at it and say, holy cow, what did you mix to get, you know, to get this right here? What is that? And I say, well, you know, I could tell you, but no, you know, it's like a chef keeping his secret. Not really, because I say, well, you know, I mixed this and this, and I'll let it dry, and then I ran a real delicate glaze over it to get that feel.
Terry McCullough had a question. Terry.
Sure.
Skip, I was just trying to go online to see if I could find more information about you and your work.
Go to skipwhitcomb.com, and I'm also on Facebook.
Thank you.
Yeah, I tell you right up front, I'm not real good about updating my web page. I catch a lot of
I
flack
just want to
about
see
that.
where you work.
Just introduce yourself.
Certainly.
Skip,
Yes.
do you hear me? It's Judy O'Brien.
Judy, yes, how are you?
Hi. When you go out to do a plein air painting and you see what nature presents, do you then decide what color scheme, you know, the different...
No, that's a great question. And no, this is what we're talking about is really for 99% is studio procedure. This is what, because outdoors, we want to gather the most accurate information we possibly can in terms of color and value. So we all have different varieties of a working palette for outdoor work. Mine ranges from 6 to 8 to 9 colors, depending on where I am, because I want the flexibility to be able to mix what I'm seeing out there and get those real, because a photograph doesn't give any of this. I rely absolutely on my painted notes that I get from outside. And then with a photograph, I can say, well, okay, see, that's where that color's clear off in the photograph. It's lying to me. It can't register color like the human eye can. So then I can use the photograph for stuff, but I have those painted notes and I have absolute confidence in those. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, even when we're not painters, I will never look at another painting the same way.
I hope not,
Yeah,
because
it opens up my,
that's what I mean. It's just about empowering you as viewers to go and enjoy these, and enjoy paintings at a deeper level, and understand that there's as much effort that goes into a painting as goes into a piece of literature or a piece of music to refine it so that you communicate that concept that you have to the viewer. And not everybody gets it. Just like not everybody's going to enjoy the same books or the same music you do. The same is true of paintings. It's across the spectrum. It's, different things appeal to different people. And what we try to really encourage the viewers to see a painting, pardon me, to see a painting as a painting and not the subject. And there's an adage that says, it goes, the subject of a painting is the painting, not the subject. So it's about the orchestration of that. It's like listening to the symphony orchestra as a musician, and listening to the horn section, the string section, how delicate, how assertive are they of understanding all these. It's about the music itself. It's about how it's made. And again, I kind of asked a lot of the viewers, but that's for the most part, that's our ideal as painters is see it as a painting and an orchestration of color and values and drawing and edges and yeah. So.
well, Skip, just a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. But Skip, when you are enjoying beautiful scenery, do you automatically analyze the colors you see? And can you recommend a book on color plan study?
Ooh, there are a lot of them out there, and I don't mean to sound arrogant about it, but there's just a ton of misinformation.
Okay.
It's gosh, there's one of the best books as far as that goes would be Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting, John F. Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. And he addresses color in there, but he's really talking about the whole process of outdoor painting. And it's an inexpensive book. We refer to it as a landscape painter's Bible. I mean, Ned Jacob gave me my first copy of that back in 1971, and I use it to this day. It's one of those great books. I read it every time I go through it. I can open it anywhere, and I realize, holy cow, I haven't been paying enough attention to this particular aspect like I should be. I've gotten lazy. I need to pay attention to that. But no, most of the books on color theory are very boring and very much, because a lot of them are really written more by people that are like scientists, but that's the best answer I can give you. And if I think of something, I'll send you an email.
I was going to say, our website is so good. We can add some of these book recommendations to that. So if some occur to you, let us know. Just send an email and we'll add it to our website.
Oh, I will.
And for you to know, and for anyone else still online, this was recorded. It'll take us a week or so to get it together, but we will put it on the recording on our website and you can see it again. Sometimes seeing something a second time is excellent because you hear things you didn't catch the first time around. So Skip,
exactly.
Thank you so much.
Well, the other thing, Skip, that we talked about is next year, well, we want to keep having you. Like this was, we figured, Hannah, I think you said this is 101, color 101, and next will be color 201. Okay. So yes, we really loved it. I wanted to ask you,
thank you,
Skip, since you went to Art Center, And one of the great artists from Art Center right now is Laura Owens.
Laura Owens.
Laura Owens, who now I believe teaches at UCLA, but I just wondered if I think Laura Owens went to Art Center, but maybe no, she teaches at Art Center right now.
Okay. No, I mean, the school is very unique in the sense that you start with a class. I mean, there were, I'm thinking in my initials class, there was maybe 130 of us. And by the time I graduated, there were only 31 of us that graduated.
Wow.
There's a super high attrition rate. And you kind of make your own little group of friends. And I was in painting and illustration. And so those were my friends. And the product designers, fashion designers, it's kind of a cliquish school in that respect. And so, yeah, I mean, she could have started a semester behind me, or I probably would have known her then, but she could have been, say 6 months behind me or 6 months ahead of me. I wouldn't have known her.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Well, thank you all very much. Wonderful audience.
Everybody here, thank you so much. And we'll see you next month, May 14th.
All right. You all take care.
Yeah.
Are you healthy?
Bye.
Okay. So bye now.
Thank you.